Hey guys, it's Mr. Isens here. We're going to start our next unit, and it's going to be on the body systems. Okay, so we are going to cover all of the body systems, starting with our first test, which is going to be on skeletal, muscular, integumentary, and excretory. All right, so these notes are going to cover every single one of those slides. And so, yeah, let's get into it. Guys. So first off, we're going to talk about our order or levels of organization. All right, starting with the cell. Okay, the smallest unit and structure, of structure and function in our bodies. We're made up of trillions of cells, each and every one of us. Okay, those cells, when they come together and they work together toward a common goal, okay, they become a team. Okay, we call it a tissue. So when the cells are doing the same thing together, we call it a tissue. When we have a bunch of tissues that are together, they form an organ. Okay, an organ like your heart, like your brain, like your lungs. Okay, like your skin, all your blood vessels. All right. So cells come together to make tissue. Tissue that work together make organs. Organs come together to make an organ system. Okay, a group of organs that are working together toward a common goal. That's how we're going to study all these different systems, right? Body systems, organ systems, and kind of how they work together to keep us alive, keep us moving, keep us running, doing what we need to do. So all of our body systems or organ systems come together to make the organism, all right? The living thing that carries out the activities. It's the entire individual. All right, it's me or it's you, our friends, our parents, our everything. All right, so this is kind of at the crux or the base of everything that we're doing. So let's kind of hop into our first body system, which is going to be the skeletal system. All right, so we're going to be covering on test one. Okay, your test is on January 22nd. All right, your quiz is going to be on January 14th, okay, on these three, okay, skeletal, muscular, and integumentary systems. So we're going to hop into the skeletal system first, and this page is super important. All right, so the main functions are basically what you need to know for the testing quiz, along with other information, obviously, but these are the main ones. So what does the skeleton do? We all have one. Well, it supports us and gives us shape. It kind of reminds me of the cell wall of a plant cell. Okay, but we have a skeleton to support us and give us shape. All right, it's going to protect our internal organs. Our ribs do a great job of covering up all those internal organs in our, our gut, in our chest. Okay, it's going to store minerals, calcium and magnesium. If you ever hear you're supposed to drink milk so you can have strong bones. Okay, that's because milk has calcium, which is going to allow your bones to develop. Okay, and then lastly, the bones are actually going to be producing blood cells, which are super important because, and we'll talk about blood later, but blood is going to allow us to transport all the materials that we need for life around our body. All right, so super important. But yeah, when you think of skeletal system, you want to think structure and support, and then some of the secondary things, protecting those organs, storing minerals, and producing blood cells. So label the bone structure. You're going to need to be able to do this. So make sure to keep track of where everything is. But basically, the spongy bone, let's actually start with the compact bone. So if you were to hold a bone, okay, the compact bone is going to be that outside of the bone that is solid. All right, it is very solid. It is tough. It is hard to break. Okay, but the issue with the compact bone is it's pretty heavy. And so to counteract that, the inside of the bone is actually really spongy. It's going to have all these little tiny holes in it. It's going to be porous or have a bunch of tiny holes because we want the bone to be really strong. So it's still a network of the spongy bone, but we take out some of that weight so we can actually move around a lot easier and don't have to have as big muscles as we would otherwise need. Okay, bone marrow is going to be on the very inside of the bone, and it's going to be the liquid that actually is going to help us make blood cells. Okay, so bone marrow is very, very important, but it's on the very inside of our bones. Okay, and then lastly, we look at cartilage. Cartilage is going to be on the outside of bones. Okay, usually cartilage is going to be found wherever two bones meet. Okay, so think about your elbow, think about your knees. Okay, think about your hips. Okay, you need cartilage because cartilage is this slippery lubricant that is going to allow the bones to touch each other without harming each other. All right, if you don't have any cartilage, you're going to have directly bone on bone contact, and they're going to grind away at each other. All right, so you got to have this protective layer just so bones, when they touch each other, aren't going to harm each other. All right, so structure and function of bones. Okay, you're going to need to know this page as well. This is a very important page. Okay, compact bones, dense bone on the outside, resists mechanical shock. So anytime you, this is going to be the hardest part, the most protection, the densest part of our bone. Okay, spongy bone is going to be on the inside. Okay, it fills the middle of the bone, gives strength without adding mass. So it allows the bone to still be pretty light. Okay, then lastly, we're going to have bone marrow. We have different types of marrow. We have red marrow and we have yellow marrow. Okay, the red marrow helps us make blood. Okay, whereas the yellow marrow is going to store fat. All right, so it's going to store fat around it in the bones. Okay, and so that's going to allow, fat is really important inside the body to transport different hormones around the body. So we're going to need that yellow marrow as well. All right, so make sure to pause the video and write down anything that you need because all that information is pretty important. Okay, lastly, we got to talk about cartilage. Okay, found at the ends of bones and at joints. Remember, a joint is where two bones meet, and it just reduces the friction in the joint, basically allowing those bones to be right next to each other without harming one another. All right, so you can see these two bones are meeting. All right, and we have the cartilage in between to allow them to slide past each other and move without actually causing damage. All right, and then ligaments and tendons. You're going to want to know both of these terms as well. Okay, ligaments connect bone to bone. Okay, so that's going to be joints. Okay, ligaments are going to, be in your knee and elbow. Primarily are the ones that we're most worried about because we got to hook those bones together, and your shoulder, of course. But tendon is going to be muscle to bone. So tendon is going to be involved in actually helping that muscle pull our bones around and move us, okay, because that's what muscles do. So you can see here, we have our femur, which is like in your thigh. We have our tibia, which is going to be the beginning of the shin, okay? And then we have all these different ligaments, which are attaching our bone, our femur, to our tibia, okay? And so this is where we get a lot of, these ligaments are going to be our ACL, anterior cruciate ligament, okay? Our ACL, our patella is basically your knee, okay? Our LCL, our ACE, we have all these different ligaments that are going to attach our knees. And so when one of these tears, then all of a sudden we have the knee is going to slide and you're going to get a lot of bone on bone action because we don't have cartilage all over. So that's where, ACL is the injury that you hear most about in sports and can cause a lot of damage, okay? It takes a long time to heal, all right? Usually they actually take part of your Achilles tendon and they are going to graft it onto wherever you tore your ACL or your PCL or your MCL, okay, just to fix your knee up. So again, Achilles tendon, what is that? It's in the back of your heel, okay, right above your heel, and it goes all the way up your leg, okay? And then you can see these tendons, okay, are the ones that attach muscle to bone. So you have all these different muscles in your foot, and they're going to allow the movement of your foot, all right? And we'll talk about that later. But the Achilles tendon is pretty cool. Also just as important as those ligaments we talked about in the knee. If you've ever seen someone tear their Achilles tendon or sever it, where it gets cut completely in half, because it's so stretched out, it'll actually roll up the entire back of your leg. So it'll look like almost like something that you'd roll up, or a rubber band that snaps and pulls up. Okay, it's not fun to look at, and it's pretty intense and does not feel very good. But that's also a really, really big deal. Okay, the Achilles tendon, because that's going to allow us to attach the muscle to bones and allow us to move our legs. Okay, so bone development. How do we get these bones? All right, we've talked about them and how they work and how close they are to each other. But what do we know about bone development? Well, what I want you guys to remember is the osteoblasts, okay, secrete minerals to deposit and replace that cartilage in developing bones. All right, when a new bone is made, cartilage is made first, then the bone layers these osteoblasts over the cartilage until it gets to a mature bone. All right, when osteoblasts surround the bone tissue, okay, so that first cartilage that's made, it's going to mature into osteocytes. Okay, mature bones, as in it has the compact bone, it has the spongy bone, it has all the makings of actually working and doing everything you need it to do. Okay, this process is called ossification. You can see how all these words go together. Okay, osteoblasts are going to get on top of the bone until they mature into osteocytes, and then you're going to have this entire process called ossification. Okay, ossification definitely is the most important of these terms you're going to want to remember. But it's just how we're going to form bones, how we're going to harden them. Okay, bones grow in lengths at areas called growth plates. Some of you might have friends or yourself that have damaged these growth plates, and that's where medical procedures and doctors really want to be careful with them, because we want you to grow and develop as much as possible. Okay, get as big and strong as possible. So growth plates are going to be where these bones start to lengthen, and it kind of hurts when it happens. Okay, you get those growing pains. All right, so let's look at some ossification. On the left, you got a 2-year-old's hand, where you can see it's a lot of cartilage in the 2-year-old's hand, not a lot of mature bones. Okay, let me go back. All right, not a lot of mature bones, but in a 14-year-old, so 8th grader, or maybe some of you guys are old enough to be 14, but you can see the development of all these tiny little bones and how they function and work together. Okay, you have a ton of bones in your hand, especially in your feet, in your wrist. It's very, very intricate in how it works. But when you're little, you don't have as many bones. It's all the cartilage, so the soft, bendable tissue. Whereas once you get to become an adult, now you have this mature process, this maturation of your bones to become solid. Okay, and so you can tell and you can feel your hands. They're mainly just bones, your hands. All right, there's a little bit of tissue around it, but for the most part, all the muscles that control your hands are up in your wrist. Okay, they're up in your wrist. So everything, all those tendons that connect to your bones, if you move your hands, your fingers in and out of your palm, you can see those tendons functioning from all the way up your wrist. It's pretty cool. All right, so ossification. What happens when we break these bones? I know there's quite a few of you that enjoy biking, jumping on trampolines, playing sports, but sometimes we damage our bones. And luckily, we're not completely out of luck when we do break a bone, all right, because we have this ossification process, okay? And so what happens is we have a fracture, as you can see in the top left, and then we're going to attach all kinds of capillaries. Those are different blood vessels. We're going to transport a bunch of nutrients to the area, and we're slowly going to develop our cartilage, then our osteoblasts are going to form, and then finally it's going to mature and our osteocytes are going to form over these, and then we're going to have a fixed bone. Now, with this process, the bone actually heals much harder than it was before. So when you make a break, you actually are going to heal your bone, and it's going to, when it completely matures and is completely healed, it's actually going to be harder than it once was before. All right, so some people will purposely have microfractures just to make their bones a lot harder. So different like combat athletes and such do this to their shins or their elbows or their fists, okay, their knuckles. All right, so bone density over time. This is a cool graph. You can see the mass of the bone from low to high. So the higher it is, the denser the bone, the harder it is. And then as you go lower and lower, that bone is going to get into a zone where it's easy to fracture. Okay, so this is like when you get older, all right, we're talking about 65 to 90, all right, men and women, especially if you think about your grandma and grandpa or old people that you're worried about them falling. Because when they do fall, because their bones are less dense, because as you get older, they become less dense, they have an easier time breaking their bones, okay, and that can be an issue at any age. All right. Luckily, if you take care of yourself, you weight lift, you stay active, okay, you maintain a healthy weight, you can maintain your bone mass for a much longer period of time, but eventually it will lower and lower and lower over time. So you'll be subject to breaking your bones. Okay, things that you can do to help keep your bones nice and strong. Okay, you can eat nutrition-wise, eating calcium, magnesium, phosphorus are going to allow you to build strong bones, as well as doing different exercises throughout your life. Okay, so keep that mass on, and the more mass you can develop now, the longer it's going to stay with you. All right, the denser those bones are going to be. All right, here's a few issues that we have with the spine. Okay, but osteoporosis is a weakening of bones due to, usually you see the issue in the spine. Okay, a weakening of bones due to loss of calcium. It's more common in women, and that's just because it's just genetic for women. Increased risk of fracture. So because those bones are really not as dense, they have much more spongy tissue, and their spongy tissue isn't as interconnected as you can see. It's much, much, much weaker. So it's lower on this graph. Okay, it's in that fracture threshold, but you might be 20 or you might be 15 or 30, where it should be super dense. But instead, because you have osteoporosis, your bone mass is not as dense. Okay, so you're subject to breaking your bones. All right, so you got to be really, really careful. All right, so a couple random facts that you might want to know. There are 206 bones in the human body. Okay, so that's a lot. And the smallest have some funny names. So called the hammer, anvil, and stirrup bones in your middle ear. Yes, your middle ear has bones as well. Okay, we have 23 ligaments, 91 bony landmarks, okay, tendons, arteries, veins, nerves, and more. We have all kinds of stuff that we're going to learn about this school year. Okay, so let's talk about these joints. Again, once you see these little boxes, this means it's really important. You're going to pause it and write this down somewhere. Okay, so immovable joints, that's going to be like your skull. Your skull is going to be fused together. So there's no way to flex and move your skull. Okay, and so you just got to be careful because if there's any swelling of the brain and your brain is actually getting bigger, there's no room for it to go because the skull does not move. All right, and that's where sometimes people have to drill holes in the skull to release pressure. Okay, so we're talking about, yes, the skull, it's fused, freely movable. So we're talking about a wide range of bones. Okay, and this is what we're going to call our ball and socket joint, or they're completely covered in cartilage, and that's going to be our shoulder or our hips, where we can really have a wide movement of those two body parts. Then we have slightly movable. So now we're talking about our elbows and our knees. Okay, and so or our back, our spine. So they can move a little bit, but if you flex them too much, you're going to have issues. You're going to have damage occur. Okay, so types of freely movable joints. We have our shoulder. Okay, that's our ball and socket. You can move in many, 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 many directions. The ball, it fits into the shoulder socket. All right, and then we're going to have so that's going to be shoulder and our hips. Like we already talked about, the hinge, which is going to be our elbow and our knee. Okay, and then finally, gliding ones, which are going to be in our wrist and ankle. Okay, they don't move very far, but they kind of glide. There's so many bones in a small area, they just glide back and forth. Okay, so in combination, all these different joints allow us to do all the different movements that you see. Okay, you see different athletes do. They need all of these different joints in order to do all those things. All right, so that ends our bone video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to go back and get those notes of all these different parts of bones, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.